your help. Actually, I'm not an atheist. I'm not a theist too. I'm an agnostic. I don't think we're just talking semantics here. And just a little heads up on myself. First of all, I'm from Portugal, so English is not my first language. So I apologize now already for some error that I make.
Your English is better than my Portuguese.
Oh, okay. I bet it can be, yeah. I think, just to give my opinion and then ask for your help, I think that we would benefit, we as a society would benefit to get rid of religion as it exists right now. But I think that for myself, I can't deny the existence of a God. I personally came to study about Christianity and later in life Islam as well. And for myself, and believe me, I had lots of troubles in my family and stuff because the Portuguese are like 99% Christians. And my argument was basically I don't choose what I believe or don't believe. I mean, it's not a matter of choice.
Okay.
I just can't believe
right. No, we understand.
Christianity and Islam. So the proof for me was overwhelming that both these two gods were false, were man-made. These are religions invented by men. I'd like to hear your opinion about these two arguments that I'm going to say to you, and later I would like to convince you, if I can, that you're agnostic as I am and not atheist.
Well, wait a second. Before we get there, let me just explain. I didn't interrupt you earlier because I didn't know that it would be relevant, and I thought that's a sideline thing. Mm-hmm. We use atheist to mean anyone who does not accept it as true that a God exists. Okay.
Exactly.
So what, according to what you're describing, you would probably fall under our definition of atheist because we don't just say that you have to deny a God exists. We're saying that anybody who's not a theist is by definition an atheist. Now you don't have to accept that definition, but I think we're on the same page with that one already.
Okay, we are then.
Okay.
I think that yeah. Well, I think to my explanation to as I thought I was agnostic and not an atheist is because I can't know for sure that there isn't a God.
Right.
I mean, I can.
We do accept that there are people, we label them as agnostic atheists, right? People who do not believe it's true that a God exists, but they don't claim knowledge. Don't make a claim of knowledge.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got
so
it.
we understand what you're saying, and we would probably agree.
Okay. So just the call. So the call won't be very long. I'd like to hear you on these two arguments that are presented to me. Are presented to me a lot of times. The first one is regarding the resurrection of Christ. This is about Christianity. And again, I don't deal with anyone out of Christianity because all here in my country are Christians. And about the resurrection of Christ, I have facts that, for me, there are facts. Fact one, there was a Jesus, a person, a guy named Jesus at least. Fact two, he died on a cross. Actually died because it would be impossible to survive it. And fact three, there were several people who were willing to be tortured and die, and actually died, to let the world know about the Savior who resurrected from the dead. Two of which are very reliable, in my opinion, because they changed their opinion, one from denying God 3 times and the other from persecuting Christians to actually be willing to die for what he saw.
Okay, now let me just hold up for 1 minute, because first of all, I do not accept that the Bible is accurate history.
Yeah.
So if the sources are the Bible, then we're going to have a problem already, because I do not believe that those are accurate historical documents.
Exactly. Well, to have these as facts for me is that That Jesus was a person. Do we agree on this? That
I would say that the best you're probably going to get from me is that there's a high probability, according to many historians, that Jesus existed. But they would not accept the miraculous claims. Those same historians that are saying that they believe that there was a real Jesus are going to describe that as a Jewish reformer, and they are not going to put the stock in the miracle claims of the Bible. So that the same people that would say that Jesus exists, that we would use to establish that, would be the same people who would say that the Bible is not reliable history and not a reliable description of the person.
Okay, so I agree. I meet you in that. Now, for the first argument, and pretty much the whole Christ miracles, my first thoughts were, so what's stopping us from worshiping David Blaine or Dynamo or any other great magicians nowadays, right? Because they perform magic, so the so-called miracles, on a daily basis. But since these people, and I'm willing to give those 2 and 3 facts away, number 2 and number 3. Since we do know that Christ actually died,
but we don't. I guess that's what I'm saying. We think that I would say that you're correct, that it's probable that there was a person. According to most historians, it is probable that there was a person at the core of these myths. That's the best I can do. I don't know that there was. I know that there's a high probability, and that historians, their best expert guess is that this is true, but this is not a fact that we can establish, like, for example, a mathematical calculation. This is always going to be the idea of this is our best, and I acknowledge it's an educated guess. I'm not saying that it's a worthless guess. I'm just saying that it is an educated guess, but we cannot, if we're going to say that we established this as fact, I don't know that I could go there.
Got it. Okay, so we can't continue on this because I already said those people that I agree with those facts, so you can't help me. I will have to.
I can't.
I myself.
I would also note that one of the people you were referencing who was willing to die for Jesus was Paul. And Paul never saw the resurrection, never knew Jesus, never met the man.
No.
Right, so he was not a witness.
Exactly. Actually, none of those 4 that wrote. There was one that claims he saw him, but they never saw him resurrecting. So
the other thing I would note is that I did do an article on martyrs that I posted at our blog a while back, and it's very difficult to find an example of a martyr who died because he refused to revoke a claim of the resurrection. There were certainly martyrs, Christian martyrs, who were killed, but I couldn't find examples of any that were killed because they denied the resurrection who were witnesses to the resurrection. I couldn't find any examples of someone who saw the resurrection and then was tortured to death because they refused to say that Jesus didn't resurrect.
I guess. Well, thank you very much for that, actually, because I don't as well know. I myself used to refute this with, even today we see people willing to give their life for something they believe, like suicide bombers and all. So it's possible that the disciples, even if this was true, were ancient suicide martyrs. So this is how I usually refute this argument. But the second one, if you allow me, is not about any particular God. So this one is tough for me because it's not any particular God. It's not about religion. It's actually science. So if I could just read the fact, I'm going to read this. It's my quotation because I just wrote this before I called you. And the fact is that according to science, there was a moment in time that there was no life, and suddenly it became to be, right? Very simple unicellular beings. Now, the thing is, even as simple as one cell being seems to be, it actually contains tons of information inside its DNA. And that information is actually, according to common sense, one would say that there was intelligence under the construction of that information. The guy that I heard presenting this argument, and I saw this on a YouTube video, gave the example of a book being just a combination of words and letters. But if those words and letters were distributed by chance alone, the probability of it becoming a well-written book would be astronomically low. So common sense would admit that there was a purpose under the construction of the DNA information. I can
give you something that might help. There's a really good Dawkins video or series, I guess. It's been a while since I've watched it, and I wish I could remember the name of it. But he gave a really good example. He said if you had a really complicated lock, right, that had like all these different codes that you had to put in order to open it, that would be quite something if that just appeared one day, right?
Right, yeah.
But let's say that you have a situation where you get like the first number of the code appears. And then if that doesn't last or work well, it goes away and we try another one. And then you have these combinations where you just keep trying and then you add a second one, right? So then we add a second lock. And then we add a third. In fact, I'm thinking of a better example. There's something online that's called the some kind of like squirrel backyard challenge, right? There's these videos where you can see people have built these elaborate obstacle courses, and these squirrels go through these obstacle courses. And the first time I saw a squirrel go through one, I thought, wow, how did that squirrel do that? Like, how did he get through all of these wild obstacles and get to the food? How did that squirrel figure that out? Because you'd have to be a genius squirrel. It was really amazing. Yeah. Well, then I saw how they're built. And so what you do is you build the first obstacle in your yard and you put the food on it. And then the squirrels work and work and work and they try and fail and try and fail. And then finally they figure out how to get through that obstacle and they get the food.
Okay.
Then you add a second obstacle and you put the food. So the squirrel gets past the first one because he's figured it out. Now he has to figure out the second one. He tries and fails and tries and fails. And then finally he gets the second one.
Got it.
Then you add the third one, and you just keep adding obstacles until when you see the end result, if you don't know how that's built, it's pretty amazing that a squirrel goes through all those obstacles because you're like, how in the world did that squirrel do that? But he did it because it was built on one little obstacle at a time. So when people are looking at this DNA at the end of things, right, you're looking at DNA now as opposed to, for example, RNA that may have replicated or something that's a lot less complex. These are chemical reactions, basically. What you had was a cell that finally was able to replicate, and then you had something that could build, right? And then it just builds and becomes more elaborate. What I'll do is at the end of the shows, they've asked me to put resources at the blog for each show. So I'm going to look up and see if I can find that Richard Dawkins video where he talks about how the lock gets built. And he ties that into how life would develop and evolve. And it might help you understand how you get from something simple to something complicated. And I'll post that link as a resource after the show. It might take me a day or two to get to it. But if you check back at the blog, like maybe next weekend, and you'll see that this show posting will have that listed.
And the other thing, talking about, you mentioned that, because of all this information that was in the cell, so much information that you linked it to intelligence. Like you kind of made that connection between those two. But at this point, that intelligence would have to be substantiated to say that, it's so complicated and we don't know how it could have happened. Therefore, an intelligence must have been there. An intelligence must have guided this process. That's one heck of a claim that you're making. The most you can say right now is even one-cell structures, these look amazingly complex to me. We don't know currently. Our methods and tools of science have not reached the point to where we can definitively say that this is the exact method of the evolution of cells over time. So the most you can say right now is, hey, we don't know exactly how this formed, but we're going to investigate and find out. But to say we're going to stop now and just push an intelligence to say, oh, an intelligence must have done this. That's
well,
obviously
and it
the
would have to be a
answer.
more complicated intelligence, which
Right,
then
right.
raises the regression
which,
issue.
well, of course, yeah, keeps going. But I don't get that disconnect. I've seen it asserted a few times. It's kind of the God of the gaps in another form, essentially, is what it's coming to. But
and it's also kind of an argument from ignorance, which just to say that I don't really know what caused this, but I'm going to accept this claim and believe it until someone proves it's wrong. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I think what Phil is describing is a lot of people subscribe to that.
It happens with the Big Bang as well, because people say, hey, this is where the scientific consensus has arrived at this point. It's the Big Bang. What happened before the Big Bang? Obviously, there was something, and it had to be outside of the universe, and it had to be, like, people will start throwing all these things on versus saying, hey, our limit is currently at the Big Bang. That is the most information that we've gotten a chance to look at, analyze, and just really look into. And so right now, that's the limit.
Yeah.
As far as anything beyond that, those are just ideas that people are throwing around. So before making the claim of what happened prior to the Big Bang, wait till we actually have some data and some evidence to actually back that up, then go into that assertion versus starting from that place and trying to make things work.
Well, there's a circularity to it, too, because it's like, well, there's this complicated God that created it. What makes you think that? Well, look how complicated the universe is. So it's like, well, wait a minute. So God exists because the universe is complicated, and when you look at the universe, you can see there's a God, and that's how we know God created the universe. So you're ending up with a circle. You're going in a circle. Yeah.
But my other question, Ricardo, for these arguments that you were saying, who was the intended audience of these arguments? Like,
I think he's saying he's heard them a lot.
Is that?
Yeah. I heard this one in a debate between, and now I won't remember their names.
Okay. Oh, sure.
One I think is the good guy was Richard Dawkins.
The good guy,
I think. And the other guy, I can't remember his name.
And the evil one.
The evil one, the evil one, I can't recall.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No,
but the bad guy came out with this argument, and actually,
and that big black hat, Bart the bad guy.
Richard didn't address it in the debate. So I tried to address it myself, and I remembered of trying to ask you for your help on this one. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and that you took my call.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And I'll continue to be to watch your show. I love you. I love the show. And I'll yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Ricardo.
Portugal.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you very much.